Welcome to a special segment of News in Motion. Today, our host Gail Dudley sat down with activist, organizer, and pastor Derrick Holmes to speak with him about the murder of 29-year-old Tyre Nichols. Take a listen and be ready to answer the question Pastor Holmes asks at the end of the segment. Are we willing to do the work that we know is required to bring about the change we want to see?
What's up, everyone? What's up? Today is Tuesday, y'all. It is the last day of January. All right, y'all, with everything that's going on, I'm so glad he was able to jump in here. I want to bring on, and I was telling him the other day, I said, we're like MSNBC. We have reoccurring analysts and strategists that come onto the show and share. And I want to have the rest of our time to talk about Tyre Nichols and what's happening and what we can do as a community. So come on in here, Pastor Derrick Holmes, and let's strategize through some of this. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's so good to see you.
Good
God
to see
is so
you.
much bigger than technology. My God.
So much. Well, I got to see what Regina says. Regina Short says, we got to put that up there, Isaiah. She says, don't call the White House half-cocked using Gail's name. Not at all. Please and thank you.
No, that's right.
Don't do that.
That is the truth.
Don't do that. Thanks, Isaiah. So we want to jump in here, and y'all, this may go a little over, and if you have to go, you have to go. But trust me, you want to really hear everything that I always call you doctor, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Dr. Holmes is going to discuss. Now we have five Memphis police officers have attacked Tyre Nichols, who is now deceased, with their feet, fists, and batons, while others were was kind of like gawking, just checking out the scene. This 29-year-old cried out in pain and then slumped against the side of his car. We all know that. Now, what we're hearing is like, just like the attack of George Floyd in Memphis nearly 3 years ago, a simple intervention could have saved Tyre Nichols' life. So more disciplinary action has come forward. We have now 2 more who have been put on leave. We have 3 from the Memphis Fire Department who have been terminated. Again, just to set the scene, we have Tyre Nichols was pulled over in a traffic stop on the night of January 7th. 3 days later, passed away. Body camera video shows he was beaten as officers screamed profanities. And even as Tyre seemed to be somewhat confused as to what he did wrong. Through all this chaos, he ran and eventually was caught at another intersection, a short distance from his mother's home. Security footage shows that 2 officers holding Tyre to the ground and a third appeared to kick him in the head. Later, after officers strike Tyre repeatedly with the baton and another officer holds him down. So I want to jump in here with the questions, if you don't mind. I have several. Yes. Now that the videos have been released, some are asking, what about the other officers? And I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on that question? What about the other officers?
Yeah. First, again, always a pleasure to share with you. God bless you. And I love this medium. I echo the sentiment that was just shared a moment ago. You have a gift, and this platform, this medium is a gift in that it stays on the pulse of the culture. And that is a blessing. And I'm not even sure if you know how much of a blessing News in Motion is nationally. You're just very much a big deal, and to be able to share is a blessing. Let's jump into it. Listen, I think that the way in which we should be thinking about that moment, I think we have to move back from it some, right? Because the truth is, with respect to the Nichols family and obviously to the Memphis community, the truth is, if we scratched out his name, we could put somebody else's name. And if we scratched out the officers' names, we could put other officers' names there and not change anything. And the circumstance still be the same. And I think the reason why we have to, in part, do that is because that elevates the issue past the personal. And the people who don't have the interest of our community will try to control the narrative and make it personal. Now, that's a harder thing for us because we're a community people, we're a village people. When it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. But in order to kind of navigate the moment rightly, I would suppose that we have to move back from it. Because if we keep it personal, then we don't deal with the real issue. The real issue is that it's a systemic issue. It's not a personal thing. There is a problem in the United States of America with the way in which our communities are policed. And there has to be robust reform around that issue. So much so to where you don't need a certain face in order to identify the problem. So it doesn't matter if it was 5 black folk, right, on another black person. You don't need white people in order to promote white supremacy. In fact, sometimes the loudest voice that an ism can have is when it's a representative of another thing, right? So we have to be able to move back from it some and then look at that. When we do that, to your question, then we're able to address prosecution, because the first thing I thought, to your point, is, oh my gosh, this is the quickest prosecution that I've seen. 2 months? Are you serious? Like that? Because I live in Columbus, Ohio, and we can't get the prosecutor that, by the way, she's not going to say it, that Gail and a bunch of other folk did work to try to get to the seat. We can't even get a prosecution of officers that are implicated in murderous activity here.
Right. And that wasn't exhausted. I was so exhausted after that. But I was like, we're going to get this done.
Right. We can't even get a prosecution here. Right. But to know that it happened that quick says something. Right. That's an indicator of a systemic thing that we have to be thinking about. If we keep it in the personal, then I think we miss the mark. I really do.
And speaking of that, I was reading, and this was perfect. So I love how we just feed off. We were even doing that. We were doing our consulting work. I was reading in the Associated Press this line where it says, experts agree peer pressure, and in some cases, fear of retribution is on the minds of officers who fail to stop colleagues from bad action. And then there's George Kirkham, a criminology professor emeritus at Florida State University and former police officer, said these words: they're afraid of being ostracized. You've got to depend on these guys. It's the thin blue line. When you get out there and get in a jam, you've got nobody else to help you but other cops. So is that a part of what's happening? Because you, as an organizer, as a pastor, as a state collaborator, who has a role with state collaboration, who deal with mobilizing and education within the church community, what will it take for people to step up and step in and get beyond this thin blue line? And let's talk solutions. Like, what can we do? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think there are two things. Listen, I'm a pastor through and through. And as you well know, when you have any type of dynamic where colleagues operate with each other, there is a certain amount of loyalty that you feel, right? I believe that to be human, whether that's in law enforcement, whether that's in the pastorate, whether that's musicians who just know each other. There's an inner network, a subculture that's created. And we can be open and honest about that. But I think, to your point about strategy, what has to happen is there has to be this understanding that the call for police accountability isn't a personal indictment, right? So we have the movement has to be for accountability. Here's the thing, regardless of how heinous the activity is, right? Or how jarring the videos were. I'm not sure where everyone else was.
I didn't watch it.
I got to see the video a little bit earlier before the rest of the country did. And I definitely want to talk about that in just a little bit. But that jarring image where you know that something's going wrong, regardless of whatever procedure someone has at the front of their mind.
Okay.
It's not the indictment to say, oh, well, this must be a bad person. All of us have done bad things while trying to be good people or trying to do what we thought was right. The call has to be to personal accountability. It doesn't matter what type of person you are. You did something that caused someone else to lose their life, and you have to be accountable for it. If this were 5 civilians beating on another civilian and they died, we wouldn't even be talking about this.
Right.
They would be locked up, right? The state would go ahead and cover all the finances for we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So we have to make sure that our tactic has to be to push for accountability to the fullest extent of the law, and everything below that can't be acceptable to us. Now, it's hard, but everything can be acceptable to us.
And I agree with that, which leads me into, this was truly, and I did not watch the video. And as a journalist, we received like, I don't know how many, but they had on top of it, graphic, egregious. I mean, they were given every label that will caution us of looking at that video. And I was like, not today. And I was not doing that at all. Yeah. So this was a very horrific act. Some are saying that it's somewhat like the Rodney King beating. And then people can see now that it's not just white officers who are taking the lives of our Black men. What do you suggest we the people do to make our voices heard, number one? And number two, I can't leave out that so many have jumped on this narrative of Black on Black crime, and some have even called it gang-like. Some of the narratives that are happening on Fox News are beyond me. Some have called them a gang with badges. The language we've never heard before when it comes to officers beating people, but now that there's 5 Black officers, that's what they're saying. So my question is, why now? And is it because they're Black officers? Can you speak to that? And can you help us look at the fact that they are 5 Black officers that, and I'm gonna use the word murdered a young Black young Black male?
Yeah. I think that the way that we navigate this moment, I love that you talked about narrative. And because one of the ways that I think that we deal with the moment and the ways in which we should be lifting our voices are around controlling the narrative. Because the narrative that those who don't have the interest of persons of color, who don't have the interest of our community, the narrative that they'll try to espouse is, oh, well, they're violent anyway. Oh, see, it's not just a white Black thing, right? Look, they do this to themselves. This is what happens in their community, right? And that kind of mutes the seriousness of the moment. So we have to control the narrative. And again, go back to what I said, we have to control the narrative so much so to where it's clear that you don't have to have a white face in order to promote a white supremacy thing, right? Look at what Kim said. It's about power, right? It's about power. We have to be able to control the narrative in that way. The other thing that we have to do, and hear my heart behind this, I've actually been waiting 2 days to say this. Because I knew that if I said it here, it would matter. We have to be able to take a moment to heal. We can't allow the moment to strip us of our humanity. And hear my heart on that. We have to be able to make ourselves, to keep ourselves human and not be so quick to react. We have to give ourselves a moment to grieve, a moment to cry, a moment just to process. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I've only watched the video once because I am team protecting my peace over here. Listen, I need to be okay. We don't spend enough time talking about the effects of mental health in our community. We don't spend enough time talking about how seeing those images, dealing with the realities of what our nation is, dealing with the realities of what our communities are, dealing with those tensions. We don't talk about the ways in which it affects us.
Right.
For most of us, when we see those videos, we see family members, right? Again, you can take out Memphis and you can put Oakland. You can take out Oakland, you can put Columbus. You can take out Columbus, you can put Atlanta, right? It's a national thing. And we have to take time. We have to be able to take time to process that. Pray, meditate, sage, take a minute, and not make apologies for it. And the reason why that's so important is because part of the oppressive apparatus in our country is to dehumanize us.
Right.
So we have to have revolutionary ways of thinking about our own care and our own humanity. Because here's the danger, and this is where it dispels the myth of Black on Black crime. And let me pause there. That's a huge myth that we need to stop saying that. It's not Black on Black, and because no one uses white on white. No one uses white on white, right? Crime happens in proximity. Here you go. If our neighborhoods were more integrated and redlining still wasn't a thing in the 21st century, then it wouldn't be Black on Black and white on white. We would just do crime with each other. That's a very poor time joke, but I hope you get what it is that I'm saying, that we have to dispel the myth of Black on Black and white on white. But here's the point I want to make about considering our humanity. There was nothing, obviously, there was nothing in that moment with those officers to where those officers saw themselves in Tyre. There was nothing in a moment that said, wait, this person looks like me. This person, he might be wrong. He might have done something wrong. I might have felt away. There are reports that, and I don't want to share them because I don't know if it's true or not. There are reports that there's a whole other backstory to this that's a lot more ugly and personal around why this person was beat to death. And I pray that it's not the case. But
I heard it too, and I won't report it here either because I haven't been able to fact check it.
Like I saw some of that, and I don't want to report it, but there has to be the thing that says, wait, let me stop, right? And that's a sign, a signifier of what happens when you're dealing under an oppressive thing that continues to dehumanize you over and over. So now you're not being human, you're just operating. I'm not being human, I'm just operating with a badge. I'm not being human, I'm just doing what the thing above me tells me to do. They went to sleep after that.
Right.
So we have to be able to do a bunch of things at one time. And listen, we're Black in America. At this point, if you can't multitask, you're going to struggle. We have to be.
I'm with you.
Look, we got to be compassionate and woke and saved and prayerful and careful. We got to be able to fight. We got to be able to speak block and boardroom at the same time. But listen, if you can't do more than one thing, you're going to struggle. And I think the moment requires that we're doing more than one thing at one time.
Right.
We definitely have to make sure that we're making time to be human.
And I'm laughing as you're saying that, but you're so right. And then even me as an African-American female, not just African-American female, woman, wife, mother, media personality, journalist, researcher, minister, ordained pastor, you gotta keep flipping all these things. So even when it came to watching movies this weekend, I could not watch any type of action type movie. I couldn't do it. I ended up watching, and some people are hating the movie, but I actually think there's so many great lines to it, and we all probably need to watch it without being offended. I ended up watching You People and looked at that, the piece with Eddie Murphy on Netflix, and said this was brilliantly placed together, but you have a lot of people hating on that. But I had to find something else. I could not watch any type of movies like that. I want to go to Fred Jones, and I'm going to go to Jeffrey Allen James.
Yeah.
Fred says the media picks and chooses what they want us to see and how often. When African Americans are killed by law enforcement, it leads the national news for days, sometimes weeks. But when the same happens to other groups, it's shoved in the middle of a broadcast, usually right before a commercial. We have to be mindful of that. That is so true. Can you speak to that? And then
I think by the way, good to see you, Fred. And the truth is that this is why it's so important to control narrative. Here is the truth. And I'll be honest with you. I very rarely say something positive, and it's not because I'm being intentional, but I very rarely say something positive around law enforcement. I try to kind of keep my mouth off of just that, because I have some own personal intersections with that. Here's the truth. There are officers of color across this country who love their people and their community and try to serve in that way, who operate justly every single day. It doesn't make the national news. It's not put out in a way that should be lauded. And we have to be able to control the narrative, right? And be able to think about it in a broader way. So I appreciate what Fred said, and I think he's right. Again, the call has to be for accountability. And listen, the narrative in this moment that says that, oh, Black people do it too, watch this, then justifies that there are white people who have done it. That doesn't benefit our community, right?
Right,
So
right.
We can't fall for the politics behind that. We have to.
I like that, politics. I like that, politics.
We can't fall into the politics behind that. We have to be able to say that, listen, blackface or not, this was wrong. I don't care if they're purple. Somebody got beat to death, and that doesn't count as service or protection. And the call should be for accountability. So I think Fred is right, but I think we have to take this moment and control the narrative. Nobody watching right now, hear my heart. No one watching this right now should be using the words Black on Black crime to talk about this moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because that is a myth. That is not a real thing. That is not a real thing. It doesn't, you don't hear brown on brown crime. You definitely don't hear white on white crime. It's only when something happens in our community where it gets elevated, like what Fred is talking about. We have to dispel that. Something wrong happened because of a system that's in place that disenfranchises Black folk and brown folk and poor white folk in murderous ways. And we have to address the system. It doesn't matter what color the servants of the system are. It doesn't matter the ethnicity of the servants of the system. If we fix the system, then we'll fix the problem.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do you have a few more? Do you have some more time? Because I'm not ready to quit yet.
Look, I got time today.
All right. I love it. I love it. Jeffrey Allen James said 5 Black officers killed, 8 Blacks in total in a city where Blacks fear their law enforcement. I have personally witnessed how the Memphis Police Department treat people of color. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. My son's mother is from Memphis. My son is in Tennessee right now. The only reason why I'm not in Tennessee right now is because I plan to be there later. So, right. So this is what happens again nationally, that when you have a system that navigates community a certain way, and they have a type of power that they exert in ways that are oppressive, then there's this other set of rules that happen in those communities. It's not something that's letter of law, but it's something that people just understand because of the way in which the system is pushing down on them, which means those moments where you hear about someone running away, or someone explaining something even though they weren't asked a question, or someone who's nervous when they get pulled over. That's because there's an unspoken law, unspoken mode of operation that's put in place because of the way that they're policed. And it's not until these moments where we get to share in the village about how to navigate that, right? So when this happens, we have, it was so sad. It was so sad when Philando Castile happened. And Gail, I know you know this, because the cry for so many out of our churches was, we're just trying to make it home. Right. It's part of the narrative now. I remember preachers that I respect getting up and saying, look, we're just trying to make it home. Right. That there was an understanding that the way in which our communities are policed, that our response to it has to be something that the world might not understand. God bless white folk, that white folk might not understand. But we have to we all we got. And we have to figure out how we navigate this until we get enough power to change it.
Yeah. I have a 37-year-old son. Yes, my 24-year-old self has a 37-year-old son. Yes. And I'm glad that he understands now. although he lives alone, doing well, you know, and all the work that he's doing. I'm glad he understands now. I'm not just calling you to see what you're doing. I'm calling to make sure you're breathing in your home. Yeah. And that's sad when we have to get there. So even this weekend, hey, are you home? Is everything cool? Even with my own husband, like, you know, because we know the times, you know, that we come in and out the house, and if it's even 30 minutes, there's just something, and I'm sure that's the trauma that comes with, like, hey, just making sure you're okay. And he's like, girl, I'm in the grocery store. I know, but for me, I'm used to something, so I'm just checking on you. Yeah. Just my Black brothers, friends, and so forth. And I'm not discounting my Black sisters, because the same thing. But there's just this fear. So I want to ask this question to you, and I wrote it down. I took it off. I wrote it down. I took it off. So if we're honest, we took a stand after the murder of George Floyd. Yet here we are again after George Floyd and many others. What is the missing piece, if there is one, that it's like, okay, we're done with that. All right, next. And we start the process all over again. Are we missing a connecting piece to begin to see a movement that this doesn't happen again? Or have we really become so numb? Because the reason I did not watch this video, I don't know how I was on live with the George Floyd. I can't get that out of my head. I remember screaming. I think you and I were talking about this. Yeah. I remember screaming like, he's going to kill him. He's going to kill him. And this was live. What are we missing something so that we don't keep finding ourselves here again?
Well, I think that more than one thing can be true at the same time, right? It can be the case that we activate in protesting ways when these murders happen, when these acts of injustice happen, right? And it can also be true that there's a piece that's missing, and that perhaps it is also true that the timeline we've created for the change that we want to see is unrealistic. And here's the tough truth. Here's the tough truth. The tough truth is that progressive movements just take time. And it doesn't mean that we have to operate slowly. It doesn't mean that we have to tolerate mistreatment. We shouldn't. Whatever way you heard that is the way I meant it. We shouldn't have to settle for mistreatment, and we have a right or responsibility to protect ourselves. The truth is, we don't have enough power to change the things that we want to see changed in our communities, even nationally. It doesn't mean that we don't have people who are doing work on the ground. It doesn't mean that we don't have prophetic voices. They just don't get the microphone in ways that other people do. Again, this is the beauty of News in Motion, because you allow prophetic voices. You had Jamal Bryant on News in Motion, right? So you leave a platform for people to share deep and abiding truth about what's going on in our community and the nation, even the world. We don't have enough power to change the things that we want. That's what power is.
Right.
Power is the ability to change something that's happening around you. And the truth is, building power and enough power to change something that's been here so long, it just takes time. Now, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't operate with urgency. That notion of power is the only reason I'm an organizer, because it's a stressful work, right?
Right.
But the truth is, we have to understand that we don't have enough power. We don't have enough power to radically transform the police infrastructure and the way in which communities are policed nationally. Right. We don't have that power yet. We don't. And so it just takes time to build it. Now, I want to be very clear. It is so hard to be patient with that truth when you're worried about your life, when it's friends and family members and loved ones who have the potential to be dealing with harm at the hands of these systemic issues. And again, I'm not saying we should tolerate it, but we have to be clear that our goal, the way in which we respond, has to be building power. How do we build power in our communities, right? We have to be intentional about the relationships that we have. we have to understand that liberation happens on levels.
Right. Right.
We have to have people in politics who are committed to our community. And we have to have people in the hood that are committed to our community. And we have to have people in our churches who are committed to our community, pastors and lay folk. And we have to have we have to have celebrities who are committed to our community, all doing work at the same time. So that way our collective power can then transform the things that are around us into the things that they need to be. And until we get that, we're going to be seeing the same thing. We're going to be seeing the same thing. Yeah. And I know that might not sound like good news, but my Bible says something about weeping only enduring for a night.
Right, right.
And that joy comes after that night in the morning.
In the morning, yeah.
And that's the perspective that we have to have while we're doing the real work of building power. We should operate with urgency. We don't have to wait. We can build it right now. You can build it right now. You can go and talk to your folk and start having real conversations about how you empower your community, about how you all protect yourselves. You all get to name the way in which your community gets to function in order to be safe. You don't need a government for that. You don't need an elected official for that. You don't need a vote for that. You just need to care for that.
You have to care for it. I just want to read some of these and then we'll wrap this up. This is so great. Donita says, I want to go back to Donita. Legislation is tough when those that legislate don't truly represent their communities. Unfortunately, legislators are about that dollar. Their intention is greed. And there's so much truth to what she said in that post. And that's where we have this thing with gerrymandering that just does not work. Because like, you're not even in my community. You know, so how are you able to do this? You have now mapped us in to your line, but you don't even come over this way.
Right.
So what do we do with that legislation? Because you do a lot with that now.
I think we have to learn how to be more progressive with the way in which we think about the power of our vote.
Yeah.
I'll speak for me because one of the things, and you can probably relate to this, I was raised in a generation where you didn't talk about politics publicly. Right. You weren't supposed to talk about who you vote for or where you come down. I fundamentally reject that. I think we should be able to have conversations about who you're voting for and why you're voting for them. And
right.
Excuse me, that should be able to happen in a way that's healthy. I'm not willing to vote for anybody who hasn't proven a vested interest in my community, who doesn't have a clear tactic or plan for how what they're going to do in their office affects my community. I'm not willing to vote for someone whose money is connected to places that don't serve my community. I'm not willing to use my vote to put people in place who don't serve my interest. Let me be very clear. Gail isn't saying this. Reverend Derrick Holmes is saying this. Listen, I am perfectly fine and at peace with knowing that some things may need to be broken down so that way other things can be built up. I'm sorry I'm getting emotional because the more I think about this, this is actually the core and crux of what we need to do. And I stay up until the midnight hours thinking about the level of commitment that's needed to live in the world that I want to live in. I'm not willing to put any energy behind anybody who is not proven to serve my community. I don't care if you're Republican. I don't care if you're Democrat. I don't care if you're a woman. I don't care. I promise I don't care. Because if your presence doesn't change anything about my present, then you are not doing your job, which means that I can not only vote you in, but I can vote you out.
Right.
These parties don't care about us.
And I stand with all of what you're saying. You're right. They don't. Yeah. They don't. And it's now time for that to shift. I know, Pastor Holmes, that people get probably tired of me. And it's okay to be emotional. Thank you for your vulnerability.
I appreciate that. Look, we just talked about being human.
I appreciate
I'm human every day.
Thank you for your vulnerability. But I talk a lot about stop going by name. Stop going into the voting booth and say, oh, this is a woman. I'm a woman. So I'm gonna vote for her. She could be the person that's going to take you down. It's like we have to do our research. And I know I'm a broken record with so many people, but it's like I really want to see the best. And I really want people to do their research. And I really want people to bring people to the chambers that are about their business and about our lives.
Yeah.
And we have to stop all these other shenanigans. And I get emotional. I get upset as well. And it's like, you know me. I'm probably why I don't have the contract anymore. You know me. I will split a ticket in a minute. It's like, and I don't care. It's like, why are we teaching just down ballot? Our former president, whom I love dearly. I get what you're saying, but let's look at Krista Cinema. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Let's look at Joe Manchin. Seriously. It's like they flipped on you. You know, anymore, we don't know if they're running on a ticket to be able to go the other way. We have to do our research.
Yeah.
It's important to do that.
And here's the challenge. And I love, this is the best conversation I could have had in the morning here. Oh my gosh. Because here's the challenge. And this is, and I hope it provokes everyone who's watching this now. Here's the question you should be asking yourself. Are you, to a person, willing to do what you know is required in order to bring about the change that you want to see?
Say that again. That was good.
That at the end of the day, we can get up here and wax poetic all day. Gail is really good at that, right? The thinker with head and heart. She's good at that, right? But here's the question. Are we willing to do what we know is required in order to bring about the change that we want to see? Because here's the thing, it doesn't happen without sacrifice.
Right.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen without sacrifice. If we become so entranced with our function in this society, the way that it tells us to function, even though it doesn't help our people, then we're not going to get where we want to go. Do we have the nerve? Do we have the nerve to say, I'm going to get off of News in Motion when this is done? I'm going to log on tomorrow, but I'm going to get off when this is done. And then I'm going to go out my community and find 10 folk who are in the community struggling and say, hey, we are going to organize what our community needs to look like. And then you go ahead and organize a meeting with whoever polices your community. You don't need a petition for that. Right? You can just say, hey, we need to meet with you. And then go to a church and say, hey, we're in this community and we've already talked to a police officer and we want to talk about how we want to be policed. And this is what's going on. By the way, there's not a pastor in the English-speaking North Americas who's not going to go, oh my gosh, that's great. Right. And then they're going to have their congregation come. And then when their congregation comes, then the media is going to come.
Right.
And now here's my point. And then now that's the counter narrative to the thing that's in place where we're savages and we don't care and we're not doing the work in our community and we're not making things better. Are we willing to do the work that we know is required to bring about the change that we want to see?
Wow. And that's where we're going to end today's News in Motion, because I want us to chew on that question and really make some decisions here. I think we're at a crossroads and it's time for us to make that decision. And we start with that question. Are we willing to do what is required to bring about the change we want to see? Thank you, Pastor Holmes. I am so appreciative. But I thought more people would fall off, but people stayed on. They're like, I want all of this, which says that this is what's needed at this time and in this season. So I cannot thank you enough. With that,
love you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, love you to life. I love you. Already know. I love you to life.
Love you too. Look, MSNBC and some others probably need to check us out to see, maybe we need to slide them in on here. Maybe we can do the stream. It's not a big deal. We can do whatever we need to do. Deborah Johnson says this was such a serious conversation on what we can do to change our community. Lori says, thank you for the conversation. God bless you too. Jeffrey Allen James says, can we do another hour? Shirley Nicholson says, must have a personal relationship with those you serve. And that can't happen by riding around in a patrol car. And then Kim Edmondson says, this is our call to action. So on that note, I just want to once again thank you. Thank you, Isaiah, for hanging out in the green room longer than our normal time. But again, I thought this was too important to cut off. Kim Edmondson also says, thank you once again, Pastor Holmes, for speaking truth to power. Amen. So with that, and a lot of them were with you on Sunday. I saw that you were at New Salem preaching.
Amen.
Up the word,
Amen. Praise God. Trying to do my best, doing my best to make some sense.
You know, more and more people, and I'm going to say this and sign out, and I mean this, and you and I've had many conversations when I was doing consulting with the collaborative here in the state of Ohio. More and more people need to hear you and know you. And I'm not prophesying. That's not my job. I don't, that's not my calling. Every now and then God gives me a word. This is not a word that I think that's coming from God, but this is what I'm sensing to share with you. Is it time for you to take that leap of faith and really do what God has called you to do, both in pastoring and in mobilizing, organizing? And I think it's so much greater than what you currently see and currently are doing. Wow. Because leaders and pastors need to hear from you and to be about that business with some how-tos, being the feet of Jesus and taking this journey. And I'm just going to pray now that you receive all the finances you need to do that, and that people will be empowered and that you have strategy around what it is that you're doing and that it will revive communities and change and transform lives. So I don't know, but I was just led to, and I got chills telling you, I was just led to share that with you. It's greater than what you even imagine. And the other word that I am hearing is don't be afraid.
I received that.
Don't be afraid. So on that note, everyone, I'm going to say, y'all, stay well. And remember, y'all make this move today. He gave us a call to action. Are we willing to do what is required to bring about the change we want to see? So with that, I'm out.